A bottle of Scotch sold at auction for over $2.5 million. A person who bought it cracked it open and actually drank it. They poured a whiskey distilled nearly a century ago into a glass and sipped it like it was a Tuesday. Meanwhile, you can walk into any liquor store on the planet and buy a perfectly decent bottle of Scotch for $16. So what exactly happens between $16 and $2.5 million, and where does the sweet spot actually live? These are the 8 levels of Scotch whiskey. Number 8. The Mixer. You can buy a bottle of Ballantine's Finest for about $16. Grant's Triple Wood will run you roughly the same. And White Horse sits right around $18 depending on where you live. These are the workhorses of the Scotch world. They are not designed to be poured into a crystal glass and contemplated. They are designed to be splashed into a highball with ginger ale, or shaken into a Rob Roy, or thrown back at a wedding when the bar runs out of everything else. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Blended Scotch makes up roughly 60% of the entire market by volume. Ballantine's alone was named the Scotch whisky brand champion in 2024 for having the highest sales percentage of any Scotch brand worldwide. Nearly 200,000 bottles of Ballantine's Finest sell every single day. But if sipping is the goal, you need to move up at least one tier. Number 7. The Everyday Sipper. Between $25 and $45 is where things start to get interesting. Naked Malt sits here and it deserves more attention than it gets. It is a blended malt, meaning it contains 0-grain whiskey. Every drop comes from single malt distilleries, and the whole thing is matured in first fill sherry casks. The result is rich, fruity, and smooth enough to sip neat for under $30. Compass Box. Great King Street also lives in this neighborhood. Compass Box is an independent blending house that treats blending like an art form, and Great King Street is their everyday Scotch. Malty, balanced, with a touch of smoke that makes it work in cocktails or on its own. Pig's Nose rounds out this tier, and the name alone makes it worth mentioning. It earned that name because the whiskey is supposedly as smooth as a pig's nose. Silly branding aside, this is a 5-year blended Scotch from Ian MacLeod Distillers, the same people who own Glengoyne. It leans into soft vanilla, gentle malt, and a creamy texture that makes it disappear way too easily for under $30. This is the level where you stop needing a mixer and start actually enjoying what is in the glass. Number 6. The Gateway Single Malt. Now we cross an important line. Single malt means the whiskey comes from one distillery, made entirely from malted barley. The entry point sits between roughly $35 and $55. Tomatin 12 is a fantastic starting point that flies under the radar. This Highland distillery produces a gentle, approachable whiskey with apple, vanilla, and a delicate nuttiness. It consistently over-delivers for its price. Deanston 12 is another hidden gem. This Highlands distillery is one of the few in Scotland still using traditional open-top mash tuns, and its whiskey is bottled without chill filtering or artificial colour. Honey, malt, and toasted oak with a clean finish. Aberfeldy 12 leans into honeyed apples and milk chocolate with just a whisper of smoke at the finish. This is the level where a lot of drinkers fall in love with Scotch. Some never need to go higher, but if you do, the rabbit hole gets deep. Once you understand what a single distillery can do on its own, you start wondering what happens when geography and climate get involved. Number 5. The Enthusiast. Between $55 and $85, you start tasting geography. Talisker 10 comes from the Isle of Skye off the west coast of Scotland, and it tastes like it. Peppery, coastal, with a briny smoke that is completely different from the gentle Highland malts one level below. At around $70, it punches well above its weight. Clynelish 14 from the Scottish Highlands is one of the most underrated official bottlings in all of Scotch. Built opposite the now legendary closed Brora distillery, Clynelish is famous among blenders for a distinctive waxy texture you will not find anywhere else. Bottled at 46%, it delivers honeyed citrus, orchard fruits, and a faint coastal brininess, with a finish that shifts between sweet malt and peppery spice. Whiskey enthusiasts routinely call it the best value core range single malt on the market. And then there is Balvenie 14 Caribbean Cask. After aging in traditional oak, it finishes in barrels that previously held Caribbean rum. The result is toffee, tropical fruit, and a creamy sweetness that makes this one of the most interesting bottles in its price range. At this level, you are not just drinking Scotch, you are drinking a specific place and a specific process. Number 4, the connoisseur. This is where serious whiskey drinkers plant their flag. Between $85 and about $150, you find bottles that are genuinely world-class. Bunnahabhain 18 is the quiet star of Islay. While its neighbours are known for aggressive peat, Bunnahabhain takes a different path. Unpeated, sherried with dried fruit, toffee, and a gentle coastal saltiness. 18 years in oak gives it a depth and smoothness that rewards every sip. Bowmore 15 brings Islay smoke with elegance. It matures in first fill bourbon casks before finishing in Oloroso sherry casks, creating layers of dark chocolate, dried fruit, and a warm wood smoke that lingers without overwhelming. Glendronach 15. Revival completes this tier. Matured entirely in Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez sherry casks from Andalusia, Spain, it is a rich, dark, fruit-laden whiskey that sherry cask lovers worship. If you are looking for the sweet spot between quality and value, you are standing in it right now. Everything above this is diminishing returns on flavour and increasing returns on rarity and prestige. But if you have ever wondered what 2 decades of patience in a sherry cask actually tastes like, the next level answers that question. Number 3, the top shelf. $150 to $500 buys you bottles with age statements of 18 years and above, and that patience shows in every sip. Glendronach 18. Aladis is named after the distillery's founder, 18 years exclusively in Oloroso sherry casks from Spain. Stewed fruit, dark treacle, toasted walnut, and chocolate. At around $280, it is one of the finest sherried whiskies money can buy. Bunnahabhain 25 takes that quiet Islay character and deepens it over a quarter century. The coastal saltiness mellows into something almost maritime. Dried figs, dark honey, old leather, and a finish that stays with you for minutes. Benriach 21 from Speyside offers something completely different. It blends peated and unpeated malt aged in a mix of bourbon, sherry, and virgin oak casks. The result is complexity you rarely find in a single bottle. Smoke, tropical fruit, baking spices, and vanilla all woven together. At this level, every bottle tells a story measured in decades. Number 2, the collector. Between $500 and $5,000, you are no longer just buying whiskey, you are buying scarcity. This is where limited releases live. Cask strength bottlings from legendary distilleries, expressions finished in rare wine barrels, and perhaps the most coveted of all, bottles from closed ghost distilleries like Rosebank, Little Mill, and St. Magdalene. These distilleries no longer exist, which means their remaining whiskey is genuinely irreplaceable. Little Mill is a perfect example. It may have been Scotland's oldest licensed distillery, founded in 1772 near the banks of the River Clyde. Production stopped in 1994. The buildings were dismantled in 1997. Then a fire destroyed whatever was left in 2004. Today, a housing development sits where the stills once stood. The only thing that survives is a handful of casks quietly aging in the warehouses of Loch Lomond Distillery down the road. The master blender there treats them like museum pieces, carefully monitoring each one because there will never be more. A recent 47-year-old Little Mill release was priced at nearly $19,000 for one of just 250 bottles. At this level, the line between drinking and investing blurs. Some collectors buy these bottles with no intention of opening them. Others buy two, one to drink, one to hold. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. I cover whiskey, spirits, and the stories behind them every week. Number 1, the auction legend. And then there is the level that you will probably only ever read about. On November 17th, 1939, just weeks after the Second World War began, a man named John Urquhart instructed a first fill sherry cask to be filled with new spirit from the Mortlach distillery in Speyside. 75 years later, Gordon and MacPhail bottled it as the oldest single malt Scotch whisky ever released. Only 100 handcrafted crystal decanters were produced, each featuring 75 cuts in the glass representing each year of maturation. Retail price was over $30,000 per bottle, and bottles have since traded for multiples of that at auction. But Mortlach is not even close to the top of the auction charts. Just over a decade ago, the record for the most expensive bottle of Scotch sold at auction was under $100,000. Today, single bottles from Speyside routinely cross the $1 million mark, and the all-time record sits north of $2.5 million. 8 different bottles have now broken the $1 million barrier, and every single one of them was Scotch. The market has not just grown, it has exploded in a way that nobody in the whiskey world predicted. The overall auction market continues to grow. The top 20 highest hammer prices in 2024 had a combined value of $2.8 million, and Scotch took 14 of those 20 spots. The remaining casks from ghost distilleries we talked about in the last level, Rosebank, Little Mill, and St. Magdalene, are the bottles that keep climbing. When the supply is literally zero and can never be replenished, every auction becomes a last chance. The truth is, the magic lives between levels 4 and 5. That $55 to $150 range is where craft, age, and regional character intersect without the markup of rarity and prestige. Everything above it is wonderful, but you are paying for scarcity as much as flavor. If you want to see which single malt is the best value at every price point, subscribe so you don't miss it.